Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 3 of Tour of the Basque Country. 190 kilometers, about 120 miles in length, and 6 categorized climbs. Now, the main thing to pay attention is the last climb, category 2. It's going to summit with about 18 kilometers to go in today's race. If we back the camera up to yesterday's race, we'll see that David Gaudu, the FDJ rider, I said he crashed at 2.4 kilometers ago, but he crashed somewhere around 4, and he's going to abandon the race. So one of our GC favorites, David Gaudu, won't start today. It was his teammate, Romain Gregor, that crashed with 2.4 kilometers to go. That was in second position, going through that right and that left on that slippery finish. When we start today's race, there's a ton of interviews. Jonas Vingegaard was the most entertaining. He said, we're going to see what today happens. Doesn't know for sure how his legs will be. But then he says they haven't even had the meeting yet in the bus, so he's got to talk to the director to find out what's going to happen on today's stage. Well, Jonas, you really don't need to talk to your director on what's going to happen on a stage like today. I can tell you. There's 6 climbs. The last one summits, of course, with 18 kilometers to go, like I told you. So you want to keep an eye on everybody. If it lights it all up and you get a small group going over the top, you want to try to win the time bonus. And then if it's still a small group coming into the sprint, you want to protect against your general classification and do the sprint if it's a tiny group. If it's a big group, you want to stay out of trouble. That's the meeting for today for stage 3 if you're Visma bike. If your director told you anything else, he's wrong. That's exactly how you want to race it. Careful, follow the wheels, follow the GC guys. Don't spend any extra energy than you have to. Get to the finish safe and try to do damage control on the time bonification sprints with 10 kilometers to go and at the finish of the stage. Now, when the cameras come on, we're talking about 70 kilometers to go. 4 riders in the front. They got about a 3-minute gap on the peloton being led by Bora. They're going to have some help with some other teams jumping on the front back there. So the time gap up to the 4 breakaway guys, it's really meaningless because they're going to get wrapped up with about 42 kilometers to go. Starts getting really exciting just after the group gets wrapped up, the breakaway there of today's stage 3. And then once they wrapped up, all of a sudden we see the crash, and it's PRIMOŽ Roglič, race leader here at Basque Country. He's going down. When you first see it, he's standing up on the side of the road. You're like, I don't know how bad it hurt he is, but then you start seeing messing with his head and his helmet. You start wondering what the concussion protocols are going to be. When you're watching it on Max, if you're listening to Brian Smith, he's saying they need to take PRIMOŽ Roglič out of the race. I don't believe you ever take a rider out of the race unless you see some real visible signs. And everything I saw from PRIMOŽ Roglič, sure, he's messing with his head. Sure, he's got a little bit of a look on his face. But every time you crash, there's always a little bit of look on the face because you're focused, you're trying to figure out what went wrong, and you want to get back in the race. I believe you take a rider out if you see any kind of wobbliness, if he starts walking, if he starts getting on his bike, he's not riding straight, he's moving left, he's moving right in strange directions, then you know you got to take a rider out. But I've had some experience with head injuries, and the same as Brian Smith said with his kid, when all of a sudden his head injury showed up 30 minutes later, I've had it show up hours later. Remember crashing at one cyclocross race in Pennsylvania, didn't think anything of it, rolled straight over in this pothole on soft dirt, didn't even feel it on my head. We stopped at the store on the way home hours after the race and started getting numbness in my left arm and down the left side of my body. That was certainly concussion right there. But you won't know. You will never know. So I don't believe in taking a rider out unless you can see those obvious signs, like when I crashed at the 2011 Tour de France and knocked myself out for a whole day. And of course, other signs that we've seen with many, many riders when it's caught on video. If you see a rider doing something erratic, you got to pull him out. What I saw from PRIMOŽ Roglič, I'd let this go, but he is taking a while. We see him with the medical. We see him with his director. Then we see him get back on the bike. He's got 2 teammates wrapped around him. That's Emmanuel Bookman and Sobrero. They'll start pacing him back up, but he's 2 minutes plus behind the peloton. We go back and we look up at the peloton. They're all curb to curb. We see Ineos up there. Michael Kwiatkowski's getting on the radio a couple different times. He's trying to figure out how long are they going to wait for PRIMOŽ Roglič, the race leader. We look over to the right side of the peloton. Trek's over there, and we see Visma bike there with Jonas Vingegaard. He's up at the front too, but they're curb to curb. They're clearly waiting for the race leader, PRIMOŽ Roglič. We go back and we look at PRIMOŽ Roglič now finally, instead of from the left side where he just had a bumped up elbow there, we go to the right side camera view and you realize all of the damage that PRIMOŽ Roglič has absorbed here in this crash with just under 40 kilometers to go, as the left side of his body is all scraped up top to bottom, shoulders, hip, everything. He took a hard hit here on stage 3, and he's got his teammates, with one more teammate getting there, Roger, that's helping him pace him to the back of the peloton. They'll start catching up with about 10 kilometers after the crash happened. So we're talking about 24, 25 kilometers into the race. We see him in the cars, then they're going to get to the back of the peloton. Now, a little strange scenario here at the back of the peloton where PRIMOŽ Roglic's teammate there is trying to bring him to the front, but he's staying at the back of the peloton. You see Sobrero look over at him. When he looks over, you can be sure he's asking him if he's okay. PRIMOŽ Roglič wants a pair of sunglasses. Now, these signs are getting to be a little strange right here when you're worried about a pair of sunglasses and you're on the last Category 2 climb here of Stage 3 of the Basque Country, because the teams up front could start lighting this thing up right away. And if I was Ineos, I'd want to be setting the pace as fast as I can so we could get Hayter to the finish with a smaller peloton. So PRIMOŽ Roglič is taking a little bit of risk back here trying to get some sunglasses. We'll see Sobrero hand him over his sunglasses, and then Sobrero raise his hand, go to the car. After that moment, PRIMOŽ Roglič starts moving up to the front of the peloton. On this last and final Category 2 climb, we see an attack with 1.7 kilometers to go, and that's Louis Meintjes there from Intermarché going up and getting maximum KO in. He'll go over solo, the peloton will go over straight behind him. We go down the descent, Louis Meintjes sits up. Once he sits up, we got the whole peloton together going curb to curb. It'll go that way into about 10.3 kilometers to go when they're still curb to curb, and then they're coming up to the sprint bonification. With the sprint bonification coming up of 3, 2, and 1 second, things are getting interesting. We see Soudal Quickstep on the front, lined up behind him, ton of Trek riders. Then we see Remco Evenepoel back there with Skilmos. We see Skilmos on his team, Remco Evenepoel just a little further back. Then we see the Soudal Quickstep rider pull off, and Trek's hitting off as hard as they possibly can, 1, 2, 3 at a time. And then we see Skilmos getting a perfect lead out, but it's going curb to curb with 3 of the GC favorites there. We got Skilmos, we got Jonas, and we got Remco Evenepoel all side by side until Remco throws in the afterburner kick here, goes solid with the pedals, and gets a gap as he wins 3-second bonification points here on Stage 3 of the Basque Country. Behind him, it's a bike throw. We'll see Jonas Vingegaard get third for 1 point, and Del Toro, UAE team member, it's the Mexican kid. He's hot here in 2024. He'll get a 2-second time bonus. Now, we see the next attacks come. We see it's Soler from UAE team member. It's my old teammate Nelson Oliveira there from Movistar. And we see Gorka Izagirre. Those 3 are going up the road, but behind, Bora Hansgrohe's on the front. They're going to get some help as Trek wrap up the 3 leaders in front with about 3.3 kilometers to go. Then Alpecin de Koenig come to the front. They got 4 guys lined up. They're doing a fantastic job. Up until about 1.7 kilometers to go when they start to blow up in the front, and then we see it's Decathlon coming from the left side, full gas. The 2 in front head out, but the Astana rider moved over left, and that pinched off Bruno Armai there, and yesterday's Stage 2 winner, that's Paul Lampiera. With Paul Lampiera and Bruno blocked off, they're getting lost by their 2 riders up front. They're trying to do the lead out with 1.6 kilometers to go when they're hitting the front. We'll go back to the front look there, and we'll see the 2 riders from AG2R, Decathlon. They never once looked back. This is a big, big no-no right here. Not looking back to see if your sprinter, Paul, who won yesterday's Stage 2, is on your wheel. So 2 Decathlon riders at the front going full gas. Then we look at Bruno Armai. Looks like he had a gear problem. So he's got his head looking down trying to fix it. Once he realizes he doesn't have any more acceleration, he's going to push Paul up on the left side of him with his hand, but that's putting Paul out in the wind. Now we're going to go up to the front of the peloton. It's 1.4 kilometers to go. We got the 2 Decathlon riders on the front, still not looking back for their sprinter. Then there's a huge crash in the peloton. We look at Paul. Paul goes hard to the left, so he's more back out in the wind. When we get the aerial view of the crash, we got GC guys stuck in the crash. One guy right there is going to be Skilmos from Trek. I don't think he went down, but he's definitely got held up. And then we see the most serious GC favorite, that's Ayuso there, all the way on the right side of the road, wrapped under the carnage there of all the bodies. Must have been about 20, 25 riders going down. And we'll see Brandon McNulty lift his bike and carrying it over all of the carnage to get over to Ayuso to check out and see if he's okay. The cameras spend a little bit of time on the carnage here. Then they come back up to the front of the peloton at 900 meters to go. It's Movistar in the front. He's going with everything he can, but he's all by himself. But he's got a sprinter back there, and Alex Aramburu somewhere. With the Movistar rider going full gas, he's going to start to blow. And Bruno Armai, he did the lead out yesterday. It was magical. He takes over for Decathlon AG2R, and he's got his teammate Valentin on his wheel and Paul LaPeria on his wheel with about 800 meters to go. Just under that, we're going to see Quinten Hermans. Quinten Hermans is Albacete de Koenig. He's going to go hard left, and he's going to slot somewhere right behind there of Decathlon riders in front. Bruno Armai full gas at 700 meters. 600 meters, he's going full gas because we got a turn coming up at 450 meters to go. As we come up to the turn, we got a helicopter view. I love the helicopter view because it tells the whole story. As we're coming in the 450 meters, it's a right turn. Bruno Armai's first. Valentin is a little bit gapped off, but look on the inside there. We see that it's Ineos coming up the inside. That's Kwiatkowski. That's about second, third wheel on the inside. And then Ethan Hayter's just about 7th position. Over to his left, Paul LaPeria is there. He's got his teammate Valentin in front of him. That's an important topic right there. Valentin in front of Paul LaPeria, because it's going to come out of this right turn and cause some difficulty. We go back to that right turn, the aerial view. We see over to the left, Alex Aramburu from Movistar's just in front on the outside, and then Quinten Hermans is coming out on the outside of Paul LaPeria. We get the frontal view now as it's 400 meters to go. Bruno Armai is throwing everything into it. Look at the facial expression here from Michael Kwiatkowski as he's got his tongue hanging out. You know he's going 100% as we're coming under 400 meters to go. We'll see Bruno Armai pull hard left. He's looking over right because he wants to see where his sprinter's at as his legs are starting to die. Now the problems begin. We're coming into about 250 meters to go. Kwiatkowski is starting to blow. Valentin there for Decathlon AG2R, who was supposed to be the last lead-out man for Paul. He can't accelerate. He's either doesn't have the legs or he's getting blocked in from Kwiatkowski, whose legs are starting to blow. We hit 200 meters to go. Alex Aramburu starts his acceleration as we're coming up to the left bend into the finish. When we come into this finish, it's going to stair-step up with some bumps, and Alex Aramburu is going full gas into the left bend. He's got Quinten Hermans there, and then we look back. What's happened at 190? Well, we see Paul LaPeria. He's getting bumped by Eduardo Zambini. He's getting bumped there. That's Bahrain victorious. We look in front. Kwiatkowski, who's blowing like crazy, he's going to get bumped there by Bahrain's victorious Nicholas Arndt. And then as Kwiatkowski's coming back at about 170, he's going to bump into Paul LaPeria too, as this is going to take Paul completely out of the picture, so he's not going to get a back-to-back stage win here at the Basque Country on stage 3. But Zambini made it straight up through the inside. Now we look a little bit further up at about 160 to go. We see it's Quinten Hermans. He's bumping now with Nicholas Arndt from Bahrain victorious. Then he does an acceleration as Alex Aramburu does an acceleration at 140. It becomes a little bit cleaner with Alex Aramburu first, Quinten Hermans second, and then two Bahrain victorious sitting third and fourth. That's Zambini there on the left, and it's Nicholas Arndt on the right. Now Alex Aramburu throws everything into it at about 100 meters. He's still leading, but 75, Quinten Hermans, Albacete de Koenig starts his kit. He goes up to the right side. We get into about 50 meters to go. They're side by side. 25 meters thereabouts. That's where Alex Aramburu hits his hard bump. Quinten Hermans gets an acceleration. He's going to come across the line to win today stage 3 of the Basque Country. Second on the stage, Eduardo there for Bahrain victorious. And third, Alex Aramburu, as that bump that he hit with just under 25 meters to go cost him a little bit of speed, so he got passed by Bahrain victorious. Now, this was a big win here for Quinten Hermans because he's had a little bit of a good season going here, but had a bit of a rest just before here at the Basque Country as he's coming in here targeting the Basque Country and mainly going into the classics, Ardennes classics that is, of Amstel, Flèche, and Liège, which I heard him do an interview on stage 1 or stage 2. He did the interview talking about that was his main objective of the early part of the season. So being good here at the Basque Country was super important. Congratulations, Quinten Hermans. You were fantastic, getting bumped all over the place. Everybody was, from 190, 180, 170, 160. It was a bump fest there from Bahrain victorious riders. Eduardo and Nicholas Arndt bumping off of everybody. Paul LaPeria and Decathlon. Bruno Armai, your lead out was marvelous. When we look at Valentin, you kind of just got in the way basically throughout 1.7 kilometers all the way to the finish. When you couldn't get around Kwiatkowski, that just cost your race leader sprinter back there, Paul, who won yesterday stage 2, any chance of the win, especially after he got bumped left to right all the way to the finish. When we look at the top 20, though, look at this side picture here. That's PRIMOŽ Roglić coming through at the top 20 here on stage 3. So he switched it back on before the finish of today's stage to make sure he didn't lose any time to any of the favorites here on the general classification. Now, when we look at everything, PRIMOŽ Roglić is still the race leader in the yellow jersey here at the Basque Country, but Remco Evenepoel has jumped over everybody with his time bonuses of 3 seconds today to move up into second place on GC. It's going to be an exciting next few stages here because 4, 5, and 6, the climbing starts getting a little bit deeper, a little bit harder near the finish of the stages. So tomorrow looks interesting when we start looking at an 8% climb that's going to summit with about 10 kilometers to go in the stage. So it should be an exciting GC battle at the finish on tomorrow's stage 4 of the Basque Country. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I'll see you real soon on the next edition of the Butterfly Effect.